guys, and welcome to episode 3 of All Hands with the New Warehouse here. So we now have a trilogy, I guess you could say, potentially. So I hope that you're enjoying the show so far and what we've been able to put out. Hope to be able to continue to bring you great content on this show. And of course, if you have any feedback, please let me know. You can leave it in the comments or send me a message, however you want to do that. But I hope that you are getting some value from it. So this week on the podcast, we had Hopstack, which is a warehouse operating system. So that's on the audio podcast. And then we also had Spot AI, which is leveraging cameras that already exist in your operation to be able to do things like reduce safety incidents and find out other productivity measures like how long is it taking to load unload trucks, and they're doing AI utilization through that. So very interesting stuff on that. And on today's All Hands episode, we're gonna have a safety tip from Kaushik Ravichandran. He is of Toyota Material Handling, and they're doing a lot of interesting stuff in the safety space regarding technology and just in general as well regarding safety awareness. So he's going to share a tip with us. I also wanted to let you know that we have recently partnered with a company called Meter, who we will have on the podcast soon, so you can learn more about them. But Meter is providing high-speed internet infrastructure for your operation, and they are able to get you up and running with internet, high-speed internet, faster than a typical internet installation and network setup, which I certainly have been a part of before and can be a holdup and a drag in starting a new operation, new warehouse setup, and also getting your operation up and running, because we know that what we want to do when we get into a new facility is we want to ship orders, right? That's the point. So you can actually try that. We were partnered with them. We're trying to bring you more value as the audience. So you can go to meter.com/the new warehouse, and you'll actually get first month free of internet on that. So you can try that service. And if you're interested to learn more about that, you can ask me as well, and I can put you in touch with Meter. There is the link in the description or the comments here on the video. So definitely be sure to check that out if you're in the market for some internet for your facility. Other than that, we're going to throw it over to the safety tip with Kaushik, and then I'll check back in with you before we get into the main segment of today, which I think you're going to enjoy.
My favorite safety tip is looking in the direction of travel. It is often overlooked, but it is critical for operators to look in their direction of travel while operating a powered industrial vehicle and be aware of their surroundings at all times. Thank you.
Thank you to Kaushik for that great safety tip. Definitely always want to be aware of your surroundings, whether you're on a forklift or any other type of equipment. And definitely interested to see some more safety tech coming out of Toyota. Kaushik told me when we talked a little bit of some things that might be coming up, but I don't think I can talk about those yet. Hopefully we'll be able to show them on this show or on the podcast. We'll talk about them. So stay tuned for that. Now, for our main segment today, we are going to check in with Rick Watson of RWM Commerce and Consulting. He is, I will say it in the segment, but he is like one of the biggest influencers on e-commerce for LinkedIn. He has great, insightful posts. And I didn't get a chance to go to NRF, the big show. But a lot of people are talking about NRF, and Rick was there, so I thought we should tap him to give us some info on how NRF was and some of his biggest takeaways. So here's my conversation with Rick. Hey, I am with Rick Watson today. If you don't know who Rick Watson is, he's like the king of e-commerce on LinkedIn. He is the CEO and founder of RMW Commerce Consulting, and he focuses on helping companies to improve their e-commerce offerings and bring them into different markets and all those different things. But he is the guy to follow on LinkedIn, absolutely, when it comes to e-commerce, and he gives out these amazing post, full of information, his opinions and everything. Really great content. And he's actually been a guest on the audio podcast way back in the beginning. Rick, I looked it up, is episode 27. We are at like episode 353, I think, right now. So Definitely happy to get Rick on. I was not able to attend NRF recently, so Rick was there, and I figured he would be the guy to give us some insight on NRF. So, Rick, first, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Thanks a lot, Kevin. It's been great. So doing well. Just getting over NRF kind of hangover.
Okay.
It's a busy show. It's a busy
Yeah.
show if you've never been or not recently anyway.
Yes. Yes. So definitely, we'll try and help you recover from your hangover a little bit. Maybe not because we're gonna keep talking about it, right?
There we go.
But we we definitely want to get some insight from you, and see what was kind of happening on NRF. I mean, NRF is the National Retail Federation, the big show, right? Is what they call it, and retail's in the name, but obviously we know that retail has kind of begun to, I would say, blur the lines a little bit between fulfillment and retail and where things are fulfilled from. We see all the time. But let's dive into a little bit of what were some of your biggest takeaways, would you say, from NRF this year?
Yeah. So I guess kind of kick us off is NRF. It's one of the biggest big shows I can remember. First of all, something like 35,000 people, several hundred exhibitors, several hundred speakers. It was just a massive show, like four or five different show floors for all different levels of companies, from startups to huge multinational corporations like Microsoft and NCR and Salesforce and SAP. So the first obvious takeaway was in-person conferences are back.
Oh
No
yeah.
one cares. I use this sort of loosely, but no one cares about COVID anymore. Everyone's back in person, um, partying and meeting people.
What would you say if you're looking at NRF, and obviously the attendance was huge, right? And I think a lot of people have been concerned about potential recession, and we've seen things in the news, companies laying off employees, and companies also overextended on inventory in some cases, due to a lot of the things that have been going on in the supply chain. But what was your kind of takeaway from NRF there? Regarding the feeling of recession, are people being cautious, or what do you think?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the biggest feeling I got when I asked people about, like, how do you feel about 2023? What are you investing in? What are you not investing in? People were cautiously optimistic. And I think part of it is just maybe just being at the show and being out with people and people happy to be out again. But I think if I had to sort of give one takeaway, people are more prepared. So when people got into 2022, I think everyone thought 22 was going to be better than 21,
Right.
because we're like, okay, supply chain uncertainty is over, all the backlogs will clear out, and everything's going to be great. And then the economy, like interest rates started going up, and inflation,
Yeah.
and the war in Ukraine, it's like this chaos compared to what they expected. And so I think everyone in 2023 is a little bit more like once bitten, twice shy. They're still optimistic, but they're also more prepared for the downside risks that they were not prepared for last year. The other thing that leads to is probably the next big theme at the show is just AI. I mean, AI is everywhere, and every startup seemed to have AI. It's almost like in 2001 when you used to see .com in everyone's URL, and that was a higher evaluation. Now everyone had AI in their name.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because obviously, I'm sure you see it. I see it, on LinkedIn, on other social media. Everybody's talking about, Chat GPT and all these AI generated things, and it's interesting. One of my friends, actually, we were kind of talking about in this group chat we have from college, and one was saying that he's like, "Oh yeah, like my boss asked me for something the other day, some like high level points for a marketing thing, and he's like, I just put it in like Chat GPT and gave it to him." And then the other one was like saying that he's like, "Oh yeah, I use it for," he's like a high school teacher, he's like, "Oh, I use it to help me generate some lesson plans too." So it's interesting, like how it's like coming in it, and everybody's talking about it. So I mean, what do you think like retailers and e-commerce platforms and companies are really kind of doing with AI, and how can it be used in a good way, in a positive way, I would say.
Yeah, look, I think the I don't know plus and downside of supply chain is, automation has been a trend for a long time, and machine learning has been used to increase efficiency, particularly like operational efficiency and picking and routing orders and all these things that AI is great at. So I would say efficiency, costs, and on the front end, improving conversion rates on the website by trying to present the best offer and pricing and experience to consumers in real time. ChatGPT won't be taking anyone's job in the warehouse, I don't think. So that's helpful.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as long as it doesn't grow arms, right? I think
Right.
it'll be
Exactly.
okay, right?
Can't
So
pick up a box.
yeah, not yet, right?
Right.
We'll see. We'll keep it, reduce the power the AI has, right? On that, I guess, same kind of thought, though. I mean, was there any skepticism or potential negativity towards AI at the show, that you got a sense of from any attendees, speakers, or anything?
I didn't get a lot of negativity. Most people are still pretty. I think we're still in the phase, particularly with like ChatGPT and that kind of open AI company, where people are still kind of amazed that this is a capability. People are still trying it out, figuring out new applications for it. Teachers are worried about it. You mentioned you found a teacher who is using it. Students are trying to figure it out. I swear on LinkedIn, I see some comments which must be written by ChatGPT. I don't understand. Like, what's the point of making a comment on LinkedIn using AI? I don't really understand that. But I think copywriting in particular, it's never going to be the same again.
Yeah.
You know, with these things, and a lot of teachers. My wife is a professor. Teachers are encouraging students not to ignore it, to experiment with it. Like,
Mm.
put the prompts into the homework, see what it says, but don't write your essay based on it. You know what I mean? So like, use it as a tool, almost like you know Google, but you still can't copy it and use it for an assignment. So I think we're still in the experimentation phase. I don't think you find many people that are, other than in education, those are probably people that are most worried about it. Will people lose writing skills or things like that? But I think across supply chain, most people are still see automation as we're on this inevitable. I mean, we've been on this march for the past 25 years with automation, and that's not slowing down. So,
Yeah, definitely not. And obviously in the warehousing and fulfillment world, looking at automation is just, I know going to like Modex last year and some of the other shows. I mean, it's everywhere. And obviously, we're the new warehouse here, so we want to hear a little bit about the warehouse and fulfillment side. So, when you're at NRF, I mean, what types of things were you seeing where fulfillment is coming into play that retailers are trying to leverage more, or maybe use as more of a competitive advantage? Who was kind of leading the way there?
yeah, I think kind of the two trends that I think continue to get more traction are, one is kind of last mile providers, where particularly in situations where you have inventory in a local place, like a local store, or regional warehouses being able to deliver into big markets same day, um, with last mile providers and not having to use an end to end integrated provider. Um, those things, providers like Bring and Front Door Collective, it seems like continue to invest. Also, kind of on the other side, grocery, I think, is a big target for automation in stores, and particularly in these big retailers like a Walmart or a Target, or folks like that. And then a lot of these folks are looking at micro fulfillment providers. We see Walmart acquire Alert Innovation in the last year to try and automate some of that fulfillment, even across like different zones, like room temperature and cold orders as well. And so all of this is driven by two things. One is efficiency. Obviously, it's very hard. If you have workers picking aisles, then first of all you need to pay for all those workers, and second, the pickers are clogging your aisles. So you kind of have two negatives, and so they're trying to move all this local picking kind of into this micro warehouse area that's attached to retail. And so I think there's a lot of retailers that are experimenting with this ideas. I haven't seen anyone who has perfected it or are really scaling it yet in a major way, but you have several players that are investing and doing prototypes, of it right now.
Yeah, so really interesting stuff on the NRF front. Before we kind of wrap up here, I'm curious, being you are like the e-commerce guy, right? So, what do you see for this year? Now we're in 2023, early in the year still. What do you see being the biggest trend in e-commerce fulfillment specifically for this year?
Yeah, I think fulfillment, the biggest thing is really the system compared to 2 years ago has more capacity than it needs. So as kind of our supply chain log jams have kind of eased, we're not in a situation where there's so much consumer demand that shippers are having to turn away volume. And we're actually kind of in the opposite situation where consumer demand has shifted from things that people want to things that people need. And you see kind of this mix shift that's happened, and people are waiting for more discounts than before. And I think you saw this where Q4 was kind of, my suspicion is when all the Q4 numbers are totaled, it's going to be about flat to last year. However, I think the peak Cyber Monday will actually be greater. And my explanation for that is because people were waiting for discounts. And so I think that was kind of well known for the time. And I think as the volume slacks a little bit, and as anyone in fulfillment knows, the way to, my friend David Glick at Flex, he always says that there's only one solution to reduce costs in logistics, and that's to fill trucks fuller. Like increase your density. And we joke about this all the time. And so I think because trucks are going to be not quite as full as before, you see UPS and FedEx having some of their biggest rate increases in the past decade to make up for some of that lost revenue. I think shippers are going to start taking, more and more of them are going to start taking matters into their own hands by, reintroducing zone skipping, maybe something they hadn't done in a while, or because I think costs overall, I mean, look, your costs can't increase 7% to 7 to 9% year over year, every year without end. You need to find ways to stay level with those costs, especially if your gross margins aren't increasing. So I believe that people will try to do more with less, invest more in automation, reduce their dependence on kind of adding more workers as they scale their volume. So,
all right, so very interesting stuff from you, Rick, and I always appreciate your insights. Whether it's us two talking or whether it's on a nice post on LinkedIn or with your own podcast as well now, the Watson Weekly, which I definitely recommend. Is a quick hit of the weekly stories from e-commerce, and it's really, really interesting. So yeah, if people want to get in touch with you or find out more about what you do, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, I mean, the best way is just hit my website, rmwcommerce.com, or search for me on LinkedIn, Rick Watson, and send me a message. Those are probably the easiest ways.
All right, great. And we'll definitely put all that information in the comments as well in the description. So Rick, thank you once again for joining me here on the New Warehouse.
All right. Thanks a lot, Kevin.